Today,
Nope.
the three white men now convicted in Ahmaud Arbery's murder are already gearing up for an appeal. This as they get ready to defend themselves in federal court now because those charges are looming. The trial is supposed to start in February. Our Justice correspondent Candace Kelley is here with what we can expect, as well as two other high-profile trials we're following. Good morning to you, Candace.
Good morning.
Attorneys for Arbery's, attorneys for the three convicted killers, the murderers, are now filing their appeals. That's expected. You told us to expect that. It's almost always happens. What will their grounds for appeal be?
Well, Sharon, as we saw during the whole trial, that they worked on what their grounds would be, declaring a mistrial at every single turn. What they're going to say is that perhaps something procedurally was wrong, that there was too much publicity that was given. Another key thing that they did not get into this trial was evidence of Ahmaud Arbery's mental records, evidence of Ahmaud Arbery's arrest records. And there's kind of looming information out there that this is what they want to see enter into a potential trial if this trial is declared to have been something wrong with it. So those are the key things that they're going to be focusing in on. And of course, they're going to talk about the pastors that were in and outside of the courtroom, making it probably, they say, impossible for their defendants, their clients, to get any justice in this case.
All right. Of course, we got to wait for sentencing too, as well. I know they're facing life in prison, but jury selection in the federal trial also beginning in February. Remind us what charges they're facing. Their hate crimes in this situation, because they didn't have hate crimes at the time in Georgia.
Exactly. There are hate crime charges, which means that in this case, we are going to hear about race. So many people were curious as to why we didn't hear about race specifically during the trial, come up with any witnesses. Well, I think that's because they didn't want to kind of blurry the things in terms of the specifics of the legalities of the trial. But here, in the federal trial that's going to come up in February, we are certainly going to hear about race because these are hate crimes charges. There are also federal kidnapping charges in this case, and I would expect that they would probably be found guilty on this or perhaps plea out because, as we know, most cases do plea out on the federal level. I don't think that they're going to put themselves or their families through this once again, Mike.
What about the district attorney, the former Glynn County DA, Jackie Johnson, as we got the verdict and so many celebrated what we could, because Ahmaud Arbery obviously is still not here. He won't be with his family. But they want Jackie Johnson. She's been indicted, Candace, for violating her oath, obstructing a police officer. What is next for her? And I want you to take us through it. What could she face?
She could face up to 3 years in prison, which is very interesting and ironic considering that she did not do her duty in terms of making sure that these three men were charged in a proper time. But of course, she's being charged with obstructing justice. She's being charged with interfering with police work because she did not make a recommendation and stop the arrest of these two defendants at the time. Now we know that there were three. So, you know, she has been disbarred. She's going through the process of going through a trial. And again, she faces up to 3 years. Whether or not she will get that because she doesn't have a criminal record, we will see. As we know, judges do their own thing in courts. And we have seen with so many trials over the past few weeks and the verdicts that the room that they manage really is their own room and their rules rule. So we are not going to know yet what her outcome will be, but she is facing up to 3 years.
Hey, Candace, quickly, before we pivot, what about Ahmaud Arbery's mother and father? Can they sue emotional distress? The officer who called and said your son was involved in a burglary, no evidence of that. Can they sue for anything here for all that Glynn County and Brunswick put them through?
Absolutely. And on the first year anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery's death, in fact, Wanda Cooper Jones did file a lawsuit against about 14 individuals, some of whom we saw actually take the stand. She filed against the now 3 convicted killers. She filed against the chief of police. She filed against Jackie Johnson. There were a number of people that she filed against just for what you said, wrongful death, as well as intentional infliction of emotional distress because of everything that she went through. And of course, mishandling this particular case. So that's another case that she's going to have to be involved in next.
Yeah, with everything that came out behind the scenes when it comes to the way this case was handled before it actually went to trial, maybe the Department of Justice should come down there and do an investigation on this situation down in Glenn County as well. Judge Walmsley will sentence these 3 convicted killers. They do have to have life in prison, but there's a possibility, I understand, of parole for them after 30 years. So we'll be watching that closely. But another case we're watching closely is the Kim Potter trial. You remember she's the former police officer who shot and killed Daunte Wright in Brooklyn Center during that traffic stop during the Derek Chauvin trial. You know, she thought she was using her taser. Jury selection starts tomorrow. Candace, potential jurors will be asked some of the same questions from Chauvin's trial, right?
Absolutely. When they get those questionnaires, which they do have them already, and during the voir dire, which is going to begin this week, we know that some of the same questions will be asked because, as you said, this is an event that happened down the street at the time of the Derek Chauvin trial. You have the same mix of people, the same community who's been affected essentially by somebody being killed by the police. So they're going to be asked about what they think about race and racism, their experiences with the police, their experiences in the community. Have they posted anything about this case? Have they posted anything about the Floyd case? What are their feelings? What are their histories? So we're going to see some of the similar things play out with the Chauvin case that we're going to see with this case during the voir dire selection.
So the case is ultimately, though, Senator Candace, around if Kim Potter was negligent or reckless. What is her defense here? Besides, I made a mistake.
Yeah, well, listen, that is the first point that they are going to turn to, her defense attorneys, that this was a mistake. The other point that they're going to make is that it was Daunte Wright's fault, and that had he not tried to drive away and potentially kill another police officer that was hanging on the car at the time, that none of this would have happened, that Kim Potter, in a sense, was really defending the police officer who potentially could have died. So that's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear a strong defense rest on that. Once again, what we have seen in many trials is let's blame the defendant in this case. It was his fault, Sharon.
Yeah,
Not sure if I remember the sequence
that they use all the time.
That way. Yeah.
That's what they always do. That's what happens. Candace, stick around. We're going to talk to you a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk to you about Jussie Smollett. Of course, the jury selection in his trial begins today as well in Chicago. So stick around for that.